Get set to get sad because WIXOSS is back on.
When the clock strikes 6:30, babe, time to head for golden lights. It's a good time for the great taste dinner at McDonald's. It's Mac tonight. Come on, make it Mac tonight.
Hey, so ahead of time, there are going to be some minor spoilers in this video, so be careful if you're not wanting to spoil any of the plot points. I was pretty big on the original WIXOSS show when it first came out. I just randomly picked it off of the Nya list, simply because I thought it had an interesting title, and I was surprised to find a card game show that actually had substance to it. Go figure. I like card games, I like cute girls, and I like actual serious substantive media, so I really took to that like a duck to water. Unfortunately though, the first show kinda dropped the ball late in the game and sort of had a ridiculous bad anime ending. But most everything leading up to the ending was pretty good. There was Yuri in the show, but it was actual lesbians, not the dumb, stupid, are they or aren't they that you normally see. They had Wincest in the show, and it actually was Wincest. No half-brother thing, no step-brother thing, no copping out of it eventually. Oh man, they broke the tropes so hard. But they just couldn't shake that tendency that animes have to have just terrible endings, even though they had a whole 24 episodes to get to it. I expect that this one's probably going to have 24 episodes too. And it's clear that they are in the same world as before, but it's a little bit later in time at least. And for some reason, the whole magical WIXOSS Torment game has started back up again. And this time, guys can be selectors too, which I think is really cool. We're introduced to a guy in the first episode who is actually very clearly our new Akira, but all the other characters feel unique when compared against the other show. I watched the first episode, and of course it got me interested, but the second and third episodes I watched back to back later on, and boy did they hit hard. In fact, I was unironically triggered, I am not afraid to admit. And that's a good thing, because that means I was challenged and I felt things. Some of this stuff really hurt to watch, and a lot of the stuff that happens in the show so far, even in the first 3 episodes, has been really sad and compellingly poignant. So we've really only gotten to know 3 characters very well so far, but it seems like there's going to be like at least a good 7 important characters in this show. There seems like there's probably going to be more important characters than there were in the first show, and I like that it's now a balance between male and female characters, but also still retaining the emphasis on the female characters, as the primary 2 characters are female, yet the male characters are now much more important than they used to be. Don't get me wrong, Kazuki was a pretty darn good character, but he got really backseated a lot to Yuzuki. Ultimately, he kinda wound up becoming a MacGuffin. So our main 2 characters are who we see mostly in the first episode, and it tells us more about them in the next 2 episodes after the first as well. Our main girl still kinda feels a little too much like a blank slate, but not as much as Ruko did at the beginning of the first season. She's clearly a very nice girl with a lot of humility, kind of painted as being a pretty innocent character. Although I imagine, given the nature of this show, they'll probably reveal that she has some issues inside that we don't really know about so far. The main gist of her character is that she misses the deuteragonist, her best friend, who is kind of a much more interesting character than she is so far, but we'll see how it develops. She moved back into the town that she used to live in, where she moved away from when they were little kids, but she hasn't been able to locate her as of yet. But obviously she gets picked as a selector, and she has to start getting her Bataroo on against various other selectors. And of course she doesn't really want to, but she's got no choice, because if she doesn't, she's going to forget all about her best friend. This time, there's a coin kind of gimmick going on, and people who lose basically have their personalities erased, and seem to go mute too. It's pretty ugly. I don't know how they're going to undo that this time. Hopefully there's some way that they can. But it's pretty high stakes. If you win, the reward's not that great either, as you might expect if you saw the first show. You can erase a memory, you can rewrite a memory, or you can create a new memory that was never there in the first place. Why you'd want to do any of these things is kind of beyond me. That seems like a really bad idea. I think if I had to choose something out of these options, maybe there's something I could erase. But then I probably wouldn't ultimately want to anyway. So really, if you get chosen as a selector, you're getting really screwed here. It's not like in the first show where you really could choose just not to battle at all. And there's a time limit on it too. Your little coins that represent your sort of memory start to go black if you wait too long without battling. Speaking of battles, they still kinda don't really explain the game very much, but really, that's not the emphasis of this. The battlefields look very decayed, which is what kinda tips you off that it's still in the same world. 'Cause it's like the battlefields before, only kinda ruined. Along with the very interesting fact that Pyroluke is still around. And that makes a whole lot of sense actually, considering something she said in the first show. Go back and look at it if you want to. Even though selectors can be male now, Lorigs are still always female. I mean, it is girl spelled backwards, so hey. Now, why there aren't any male Lorigs now, who knows? There might be a plot reason for it, or it might just be because we like the cute girls. We've got a whole slew of new Lorigs, and they're all pretty interesting, I must say. The two main characters Lorigs are based on characters made by the Deuteragonist back when they were little kids. And they interestingly take on the characteristics of the opposite girl. And both of them are basically battling to not forget one another while they still can't find each other in person for whatever reason. Well, the reason is clearly chance, I guess. Now, the secondary protagonist, she's really interesting because she seems kind of perfect at first glance, but she's actually got some real problems. Her family done went broke, and she's working really hard in both school and work at McDonald's to try and make money for her folks. But her dad keeps getting screwed over at his job. So she's in a real pinch, and she's clearly psychologically pretty messed up. So this could go in interesting places. As for the male selectors we've seen so far, they interest me especially. We don't really know much about most of the selectors we've seen so far. There's a couple of girls with their various quirks, and there's two guys we've been shown so far. The Akira equivalent, and this blonde guy here who really messed up previously. Because he was too busy focusing on his own crap, he lost track of what was important, and he basically let his sister get owned in the selector battles, and she got erased. So now he's heavily traumatized by that, and trying to, I think, probably forget about his sister or something like that. Erase the trauma of having let her down. A lot of these heavy psychological themes in the first few episodes actually have some gripping relevance to my life. But the blonde guy, his Lorig is really funny because she acts all cute and stuff, but she's actually really mean. And so it's hilarious when she gets angry and she just starts being awful to him. Yeah, I have to say the blonde guy, he's very much the most interesting character to me so far, and I can't wait to see where his character development takes him. Man, I'd like to go in depth and just pick apart every little detail from these 3 episodes, but I gotta stay on top of this so that I actually get these videos out. Once we get a little more plot detail, then I'll really start to get into it. Really looking forward to watching more and more of this. Hope you are too.
Subscribe to King Critic.